Hey, PiYo Live instructors, Erin Scott. I saw that there were a couple of questions about how you might go about learning a new PiYo Live round. Now, one of the things I try and explain to new instructors, particularly instructors at the training, so when you're at your training, everything that you learn, the process that you use to learn the round that you're being trained on at your actual instructor training, all of those tools, all of those resources, all of those tips, that's something that you can then reapply to every round that you ever receive. So think back to your training, first of all, and recall how you may have learned that round, because we didn't have a lot of time to sit there and like memorize choreography or anything like that, but we worked together in small groups and we kind of broke down how to sort of execute cueing for a particular section or two, right? So that's really where I want to encourage you guys to start, is to start with a section that might come a little bit easier. For example, the warm-up, because once you learn it, it's the same round to round, right? So really start to master learning how to cue the warm-up. And then maybe another section that's a little bit trickier for you, possibly flow or full body fusion. Flow, in essence, because the pattern is actually quite simple, that might actually be a little bit easier to learn. Plus, we also know that there's only 8 moves total throughout the entire flow section, even though it's good 12 minutes of your class. So decide, which 2 sections you want to start with. And that's really where you're going to start. But I have a process that I use to learn a new round every single time I get one in the mail. So this is simply how I learn to teach PiYo Live. It might be helpful for you. Some parts of it might be helpful for you. You might take what I give you and then kind of enhance it and make it your own. But I really do want to encourage you to be patient. Trust the process and know that anybody can do this. It just takes a little bit of practice. And even to this day, I still spend a good chunk of time learning a new round before I put it in front of my students. Now, if you're looking for a rather short learning curve, I've got some tips for that as well. So, new instructors, here's the first thing I do. I open up my round. I pull out that really long and slightly cryptic, although not so much anymore, page with the choreography notes, and I pop in my DVD. Without, actually, you know what I do first? If I can, if it's possible, I will actually listen to the music. So I'll listen to the CD without having known what any of the choreography is supposed to be first. And that also just gives me an opportunity to be familiar with the timing of the song. Obviously, it's square music, it's 32 count phrasing, but it gives me kind of just a sense of like how the song goes and how it blends with the other songs and the other sections and that kind of thing. So if you can do that first, great. But if you're just like, you just got it in your mailbox and you're ripping open your, don't rip it, rip open the plastic to your round, the first thing I'll do is I will take out my choreography notes and pop in my DVD and I'll watch the preview. While I'm watching the preview, I will write out my own notes from the notes that I get in the round. Now, I just happen to have right in front of me like my insanity round notes, so that's just the ones that I happen to pick up. But the same applies for PiYo, right? So you've got your notes, and so while I'm listening to, it's usually our format expert, Michelle Park, but it could also be one of the lead instructors from the round cast, but whoever is going through the preview section, I'm listening, I'm watching, I'm paying attention, but then I'm also writing down in my own sort of language in bigger letters on a bigger sheet of paper my choreography notes. I will generally devote a single page of paper to each section, the exception being the warm-up. I don't write that out every single time. Obviously, I have memorized it since then, but I write it out once and then I can just use that from round to round until I've memorized it. But I'll usually devote a piece of paper for each section. That being said, that can generate a lot of paper. So just so you guys know, I recycle. So I use paper that maybe my printer misprinted. And so I basically use scrap paper. for all of my notes. And then what I do is I hole punch them and I keep them in a binder. So I actually have a binder of all of my choreography notes from the start of my teaching career. You will find every sheet of paper from every round I've ever taught in a binder, and it's actually sorted out by format. So I have a section just for PiYo, a section for Turbo, a section for Insanity, etc. Anyway, so I do that. I write it all out, and then I will actually do the full workout. Now, here's why I recommend that no matter how quickly you can pick up choreography from the preview or how quickly you can memorize choreography, I want to encourage you to do the workout full from start to finish, following the cast at least once with every new round. Here's why. It enhances the experience of the students because you can actually speak from your own experience when you're cueing to them. How great is it that you know ahead of time what they're probably feeling when they do the class that you're teaching for the first time, or even the second time, or even the third time. So being able to speak from true experience about what your students are going through. So essentially what I'm saying is be the student at least once. Okay, so take the workout portion of the DVD at least once, even if you don't necessarily need it as a teaching tool, but rather it's just gonna help you have more cueing material to work from because you have that experience, you have the student experience to speak from. So I think that's really helpful, especially if you're like, all I ever do is feel like by week 8, I'm cueing the same thing that I cued, 4 weeks in a row and people are bored. Well, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be like that. You have plenty of, cueing material and teaching material to pull from, especially if you have that, student experience to speak from. So I love to say, just as an example off the top of my head, but like, oh my gosh, guys, this section makes my booty burn like you have no idea. So I can't wait for you and I to be in pain together or something silly like that, right? Okay, so once I do that, I do the full workout. I've already written out my notes. I have taken down any additional notes of to put next to the choreography based on what I learned in the preview, especially if there's a modification that might not be instinctive, although usually they are, right? And then I will actually do the workout to the music without cueing at all, okay? Because I want to be able to feel the movements that I'm doing. I have my notes in front of me, but I'm not speaking any words. So it's kind of like that student experience all over again, except this time it's to the class music and we don't have any cueing going on at all. You're just kind of reading through your notes as you're doing the workout. And then, again, I recommend taking 2 sections to start with where you're going to actually start practicing cueing the moves to the music. And then once you feel like you've mastered those 2 sections, you can then learn another section and then another section and another section. And as you do that, you're going to start to build that class. And before you know it, you're not going to need those notes anymore. And you're really going to feel confident about how you teach and cue to your students. If you want more specific guidance on that, I'm happy to chat with you about that. You can just shoot me a quick email, erinberryscott@gmail.com, and I'm happy to kind of like walk you through musicality if that's something that you're struggling with. But honestly, like when it comes to musicality, it's important to know that, again, you can, have some flexible freedom when it comes to when you add on a layer or move on to the next move. So for example, in the flow section, if your students are really feeling successful at that 16 count, but you think that cutting down to that 8 count the very first week or even the second week of the flow section would be too challenging for them, keep it at 16 for the remainder of the music for that side. I think that that's completely okay. And what that will require you to do is to feel really comfortable and really confident about cueing, on the 16 count. So I hope that's really helpful for you. If you want more help, if you want some more guidance or maybe just like a couple tips or two, I'm happy to send you more information or chat with you over email or something like that. Or if we're friends on Facebook already, you can shoot me a Facebook message. That's cool too. I just realized how long this whole video was. I hope it was worth it. But that's sort of my you know, my walkthrough how I learn a new round, not just PiYo, but pretty much like everything that I teach. That's kind of my stepwise fashion. And I definitely follow my own notes better than I do the choreography notes that are printed for us. They're a fantastic starting point, but that's usually not how I learn my choreography. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. Please be sure to reach out if you do want additional guidance on how to learn your choreography. Thanks.